Hello, everyone, and welcome to IDA Screening Series presents Ailey. We're very excited to have you all here today. My name is Cassidy Diamond. I am the Associate Director of Public Programs and Events here at the International Documentary Association. I'm coming to you today from Chicago, which is on the unceded and stolen lands of the Potawatomi, who have been stewards of this land for generations. I would also like to offer thanks to IndieWire for their media support for bringing the screening series to you all. We're really excited to have them on board. And this is just the beginning of our series. We have so many more amazing films coming up. Please be sure to visit us at documentary.org/screening series to find out all of our upcoming films. We have in-person screenings here in Los Angeles and a bunch of great digital screenings happening as well. But you're not here to see me, so I'm gonna hand things over to Jazz Sankey from Variety. Welcome, Jazz.
Thank you, Cassidy, and thank you to the IDA. Such a pleasure to be here. I'm Jazz Sankey, Senior Artists Editor at Variety. So excited for this conversation with Jamila Wignot, Director of Ailey, who in her incredible film highlights Alvin Ailey's legendary choreographer's life and his visionary work. So without further ado, let's bring out Jamila Wignot.
Good morning.
Hi, Jamila. First of all, congratulations on this incredible documentary. And I mean, let's just go back to the very beginning. I mean, what was your relationship with Alvin Ailey, his work before the documentary even happened?
Yes, so thanks to the IDA for having this conversation. I'm really thrilled to be here and to talk more about this film and this extraordinary man and company. My relationship to the Ailey company was really that of a fan. I discovered them in college, very sort of in a happenstance way. A group of students got free tickets on campus, and we went to see a dance performance by a company called Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. I didn't know of them. I didn't know of him. I'm not a dance person even, but it was just the most beautiful and powerful and joyful, visual spectacle I had, taken in of that kind. And it was also this kind of very important counter narrative. And that very much kind of struck with me, a counter narrative to the ways in which, particularly, Black life and Black culture were spoken of. This was in the mid-90s. And there was this sense for me of, watching a dance and seeing a dance, but also kind of being seen by the people on stage. So it was just this very powerful initial introduction. And then I remained a fan of the company ever since. And then really this film, kind of found me. So it's been kind of this very serendipitous experience overall.
Yeah. And how did it find you? What was that story and that journey to telling his story?
Yeah, so I have made films for public media for many years since the beginning of my career. And there are a couple people in New York at a production company called Insignia Films. They approached me in search of a director, really a kind of introductory, hey, we are looking for a director to make a film about Alvin Ailey, and we don't know, would you have any interest in this? And it's like, what are you talking about? Yes, and it was really just that, me feeling like I'd been, just handed this gift of a documentary. And at that time, it was really, for me, a real sense of enthusiasm just to work on a film that would have dance material that I loved at the center of it, and where movement and visual language would be so important. There was this sense that I had right from the beginning that there would be a way to tell story that wasn't about words, or only interview driven, or that there was going to be a lot of meaning and resonance that would come from being able to interweave these dance works that are sort of narrative and stories in their own way. So that was like the initial excitement, and yeah, again, just this kind of incredible gift that was handed to me.
Yeah, and what a gift he gave the world, and especially the world of dance. And there's so much that he choreographed something like over 80 ballets over the course of his life. What is your way in to telling his story, like for you, like, and the research, and where did that begin for you?
Two things. One, there was a really wonderful biography written in 1994, I believe that's the right date. And so I really started with that text. And the thing that was immediately clear was the text was rendering a person who just seemed very, open and sensual, and sort of like a very open, tactile, a kind of individual in his earliest years. And so I was very intrigued by the way this biographer was describing Ailey's earliest life experiences. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Because for me, the goal was to embody, as an audience, to embody his experience. I think in all my films, I'm really interested in point of view and being in the point of view of the subject, as opposed to sort of talking around them. So this question for me was like, oh gosh, how can we get close to him? And later I learned that a lot of that material in that biography was actually drawn from these audio recordings that Alvin Ailey had conducted in the last year of his life, where he was engaged in this act of memory, thinking back on, how he would describe his own life for an autobiography that he was in the process of writing. And so once we got a hold of those tapes of him and hearing his voice, a whole kind of world was unlocked for us, because we realized, oh, we can actually have Alvin Ailey tell his own story. And for me, that was very, that was something that was very interesting. I really wanted to feel close to him, because I didn't know much about him before beginning the process. I only knew about the works that he created. And so to me, it was like, well, what was driving him? And if I can hear him say that in his own language, that just felt very powerful and very intimate. And, he is this beautiful, delicate, vulnerable, funny man. And so to hear him in his own words really was kind of the unlocking for the whole film.
Yeah. And I love the audio recordings, just because, as you say, it's that personal aspect. It's him telling his story, and it serves as such a beautiful thread throughout the film. Like, how much of that existed, and then how much did that ultimately shape or change, because you're like, this is a story I'm going to tell. Oh, look, these tapes exist, and then the story changes shape because you get that. So talk about getting access to that and moving from there.
So we knew that he had done a lot of public interviews over his life. And so some parts of the way that he talked about his story was there. So we always knew there would be some sense of him being able to carry his own story. But we actually came to those tapes later on in our research process. So really, it shifted from being a story where we were going to have to lean on his collaborators to talk about him. And instead, we're able to lean on him to talk about himself. And there are, of course, choices that come with that. I think, how does, anyone who's engaged in telling their story, engaged in memory, it's not exactly, it's not journalistic. It's not even the way a biography works, right? We're kind of allowing him to shape his own narrative. And yet it felt like in these audio recordings, because they were conducted in the last year of his life, because there was this kind of easy quality that he had with that particular interviewer that he doesn't have when he's doing his public, his sort of public facing self is very performative. In this, you really felt like he himself was trying to get at, like, well, what are the most essential experiences I have, the most defining experiences I have, and let me really kind of dig deep into those. And see, and see what I can find. And so there was a kind of essence of him that I think was really coming across in those recordings. And so then it shifted everything. I mean, we went from, it changed the way we were going to source archival, because now we knew, okay, we have a guy who can tell his own story in audio recordings, but because he grew up very working poor in the 1930s. It's not like his mother was following him around with a home movie camera. How are we going to depict some of the experiences that he's talking about? And fortunately for us, we had both Mr. Ailey's own notion of blood memories, which is his kind of idea, something that a lot of his, Black dance works are rooted in, this kind of ancestral memory, where the experiences he's depicting have a kind of, they're very rooted in, it's not just him and his experience, it's his mother, his grandparents, the whole community really is what he's trying to stage. And so that opened up visual possibilities for us to kind of find in archival moments that felt like they were impressionistic renderings of the kinds of things he was talking about. He had a kind of poetic language in his discussion of his own life. And so our archival material, we were in search of something that would give us that kind of same poetry. Then, of course, the other part of it was that we were able to follow Rennie Harris as he, in present day, is building a new dance work inspired by the life and times of Mr. Ailey. So we also, in filming those dance rehearsals, are looking for, where in this dance is Rennie's dance creation kind of equally in line with the kinds of things that Mr. Ailey is saying. And so that kind of shifted the process for us, and really, I think, opened up for something where, in a way, we were choosing to create a kind of film that wasn't necessarily, it's not a book, it's not a biography, it's not a journalistic endeavor. It's not rooted in, oh, you're going to learn like every single thing about this. It was something that ultimately what we felt we needed to do is create something that was very experiential.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about Rennie Harris as, he's such an incredible choreographer, and you show him in the studio. Talk about like his story and what made him the perfect, the perfect addition to telling, Alvin's story and the impact of his work ultimately.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, this whole film is just amazing in the ways that there were just so many, I keep using the word serendipitous, but that's really what it was. When we talked about, as I started thinking about the film early days, I felt like, okay, to properly engage Alvin Ailey's life and work and vision, you can't contain it just to his own time, because even from the beginning, he always thought of the company as living beyond him. He was staging works, by other choreographers. And so if we didn't show something from the contemporary dance period or show something from today, you don't have a sense of the kind of ongoing legacy and continuation of his vision and mission. So when we approached the Ailey company to say that, we were a team who wanted to make this film, and what did they think? And we mentioned, like, can we get access to the company in some way? They said, it's so weird that you're coming to us now, because actually we just commissioned Rennie Harris to do a dance work about Mr. Ailey's life and times. And we were like, whoa, that's great. And it was going to be an hour-long ballet. And, Rennie Harris's dance language is totally different from Alvin Ailey's. It's street dance. So just that was going to be an interesting approach, how to marry that dance language with kind of Ailey and then with his story. And what was great is, Rennie is somebody who, he's very intuitive. I think all choreographers are like this, but, he came into the studio with a few dance phrases, and I think having a sense of a feeling overall that he wanted the dance work to have. But but it wasn't like he knew, oh yeah, you know, the opening 15 minutes is going to be just like this. So we were really watching him wrestle with a process, and I think wrestle with a responsibility. And I felt a very kindred spirit to him, because while it wasn't you know, while we were there to sort of document this rehearsal process and I wasn't feeling the pressure in that moment, later, it's like, oh, now, you know, I have these two extraordinary dance makers to kind of synthesize together. And similarly, my editor and I also had a very intuitive process. So there was just something where it became clear over time that, you know, the themes that Rennie was really exploring, which are universal themes, I think, you know, around sorrow and alienation and rage and anger at, you know, as he says in the film, you know, what it means, you know, when your country, you know, sort of despises you, and all that was going on in 2018 when he was building that dance, that all kind of came into that room. And so it was just very beautiful to watch that. And I, you know, for me, the dance solo that he created, that we use in the film almost as a whole kind of excerpt, is just one of those moments where it's just perfectly aligned with the possibility of having something just be visual, just be dance movement, and yet the feeling and the story and the themes are really there. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just great.
Yeah, I love that, you know, in especially after last year, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and, you know, how he used dance as a form of protest. Like, talk about what it was like for you going back, seeing all of that at that time, as everything that's going on in the world, and you see how, you know, he didn't go out on the street and protest. Like, it was there in his work. We can watch it today and you'll still see it. Like, talk about that. And
yeah, I mean, what I think is so amazing about that idea is, and I think it's very true, is thinking about what forms do protests have to, what forms do they take, can they take? And I think with both Ailey and with Rennie, they understand that what protests are about is essentially staking a claim for yourself and demanding to be heard and seen in certain ways. And so even in Mr. Ailey's work, where there are dances that are about joy, or there are dances about, you know, sort of essential kind of Black Southern traditions, the juke joint, the church on Sunday, for him to be able to center his works in that, to show it, to focus on, you know, ordinary people and their lives, but to say that this ordinary life embodies all of the greatest themes of you know, human existence, and that it's worthy of the stage. That is a kind of protest in a moment when the whole of who a group of people are is not only not being seen, it's being denied in ways that are both, you know, sort of, you know, you're just sort of negated from inclusion in the society at worst, you know, in the least way. And then the violence and the brutality, you know, that was exacted upon, you know, the Black community. And both of these choreographers are kind of exploring that. Rennie exploring it, you know, as he says, it's not just about back then, it's about today. I think it's why Mr. Ailey's work is so resonant. But I think what's so great is this idea of protest can be, you know, a Black woman dancing beautifully on stage, and there's a sense of her power, her dignity, and her capacity on that stage to have all the kinds of emotions and emotional experiences that are actually not, you know, that are denied you in public. So to me, it was really an interesting way of thinking about dance. And then later I was seeing, you know, thinking about the Black Lives Matter protests of the last year and how people were dancing, right? They weren't protests that were sort of, it was this kind of, it wasn't just about sober and serious. It was like, we exist and we are joyful, and there's some aspect of, you know, our being that can't be can't be taken from us. And so we're on these streets making a statement, but we're also going to dance in that. And I think there's something, very beautiful about that and very resonant about that, and something that Ailey understood even as early as 1958.
Yeah. And you mentioned your editor. We have to give a shout out to Anuka, who did, they're one of my favorite things of watching Ailey is when you land on like a rehearsal moment, or like those, the archival video, and it breathes, like you're not rushing past it. So it goes back to like telling his story and absorbing that. Talk about the conversations you had with Anuka and working to just be like, let this sit here and
thank you for bringing her up. I feel like increasingly editors are getting their just due as co-authors of documentary storytelling. They are so important. That relationship is so important. And she is this incredibly, intuitive and very emotional editor. I think she comes from a place really of thinking about how do things feel, and she cuts in that way, right? So like there were times where I would, because we were making this all through the lockdown, through the pandemic, and so it was all remote. So we'd go into a Zoom room together, and she'd be there weeping, sometimes weeping from just happiness, and sometimes weeping from the kind of real sadness and tragedy that's in this story as well. So I think that idea of breath and allowing things to just be, to taking our time, that was just something that we both sort of felt like, how can we just live in this moment more? And also a real emphasis, I think, for both of us, we're really interested in process, and we're really interested in the artistic process. And so there are just times in the film where I think, we created moments where that can happen and that can be seen. There's that great moment where Ailey's talking about, what he loves, that he loves the discipline, that he loves, taking a couple bodies and putting them in space and saying, carve this space. And it's the combination of her hearing those words and then there's this moment where he says, carve this space, and the dancer's arms come back in this beautiful shape. And it's like she found this incredible archival moment that just perfectly paired with the language and what he's trying to say. And I think, that's there are moments with her where it's like, oh my God, yes, exactly. But she is that editor where you can say, I want this, we just spoke in very emotional terms. I want to feel, we talked in this film a lot about how the highest highs had to be matched by the lowest lows, and wanting to, feel like we were mirroring the kind of really huge emotions that you feel if you go to an evening of Ailey. Like that was a part of it too, knowing that this documentary had to kind of live in the same space as what it feels like when you go see his dance works. And I think so having those as a guide was really helpful for us, because his work really travels and takes you on an emotional journey. And so, we were adamant about doing that. And a lot of it was, we would build, we sort of built up the whole film, and then we start layering in images. And then as things start to work, we just start pulling out words, and we just pull and pull and pull. And sometimes we pull too far, but we always had an interest of like, how little can we say and still sustain the film? And so I think, as I was talking about earlier, that solo moment with Daniel, the dancer who dances, the solo that we use when Ailey is talking about his kind of agony and isolation, or we've just lived that. There had been some commentary in there, and we just realized we were at a moment in the film where we could say, just strip it all out and let's just live in the dance. And it's a part of the film that I just love. Like, we don't need to tell you anymore. Just live in this space and take it in. And I think we're both also, she's cut both fiction and nonfiction film. And so I think her fiction background means that she's someone who's really attuned to subtext and thinking about, sometimes it's okay if the audience can walk away with their own meaning. We don't always have to be telling them what to think and what to feel in every scene.
Yeah. And, you're talking about, what to leave in and what to take out. How did you want to address his sexuality, and what was the approach to that? Because that wasn't going to define, this story of the documentary. So what were the conversations or thoughts you had?
Yeah, I mean,
around
that
that?
was just such a tricky part of the film because we knew we're going to include it. It's so essential to who it is. I think his worldview is defined by everything that he was is defining the power of those dances. So I think, his sexuality is a huge part of that, and it can't be taken out. He is Black, he is gay, he grew up at a very specific moment in history. He grew up poor, he grew up with a single mother. All of those things shape his worldview. And so one of the things that we knew was that we just wanted people to experience his kind of sexual awakening with the character Chauncey right up top. And it was because from that point on, you should understand that what you are seeing and what you are hearing is the point of view of a queer Black man. And so we very much wanted to include it. The challenge, of course, was, or the thing that became interesting was in those audio cassettes, which I think is him being sort of the most vulnerable and revealing, he mentions two experiences, this early experience with Chauncey and this last experience with Abdullah. And then he led this deeply private life. So we couldn't get at, very much more than that. And he didn't create, deeply intimate relationships really of any kind when you think about it. He was so private, and there was some part of himself that he kept away from everyone. And ultimately, I think we realized, that is the point then. Then who you meet in this film is a person for whom that is how they live their life. And we really were not interested in providing our own psychoanalysis of it. It was like, let's just experience it as he experienced it. And then this is something to know about him. So yeah, I mean, we wished that there had been more, it's something that I would ask him about if he were still around today.
I think if you follow choreography, dance, you know who he is. And yet some people are just about to discovering him through this, through this incredible film. How would you describe his impact on dance to those who have just discovered who Alvin Ailey is?
Oh man, I mean, his impact on dance is kind of indescribable. I mean, he just broke open a whole door. And the thing that he did that was so unique as a modern dance choreographer is that all of them built companies in their own image and in which dancers only danced works they created. Ailey, from the very beginning, envisioned a company that was a repertory company, which meant you would dance his works, you would dance works of those that came before him, because he really was desperate not to lose these influential works by these choreographers who so much inspired him, like a Katherine Dunham. And you would be able to see work of new and up and coming choreographers. So what he wanted was for his audiences to have this total experience. And it's why he's lasted for so long. I think it's not that he gave us a kind of technique like Martha Graham, or that he was part of the avant-garde. It's what his vision was for what dance and the arts could mean for all of us. And then I think it's like that idea that inspires me. I think he made space for me, even though I'm working in film, because his whole endeavor was really a kind of evangelism for dance and evangelism for, diversity and inclusion, the terms that we use today. So I think he's just foundational as a dance maker, but also foundational as a kind of artist who was ahead of his time in thinking about what the arts could mean, who should have access to them, and the idea that, we all have a voice and something to say, and we can embrace that about ourselves. And yeah, I mean, it's really hard to sum him up. He's all things.
I love that. Jamila, thank you so much for that incredible conversation and insight into your work. Thank you, of course, to the IDA and to Neon too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.